you and those who didn't attend yesterday's AFET meeting, once again a Happy New Year and all the best for 2025. Item number 1 is the adoption of our agenda. Are there any objections from your side? If that is not the case, I propose to adopt the agenda as it stands. Item number 2, our meeting today is as usual being web streamed and we have interpretation in a number of languages. So please feel free to speak in your native mother tongue if you wish. Item number 3, I'm very happy to welcome Marta Kos to today's meeting, our new Enlargement Commissioner, and this is the first exchange of views with our committee in her new role. Colleagues, I don't have to remind you that enlargement has become again one of our strongest EU foreign policy and geopolitical tools. It remains a key driver for long-term security, peace, stability and prosperity in Europe, and it also represents a historic opportunity with significant socio-economic, political and security advantages for both the enlargement countries and us as EU27. You recall, on the 18th of November last year, Commissioner Vahey presented the 2024 enlargement package in AFET, and we had an exchange of views regarding the way forward for the countries aspiring to join our family of nations. Progress on the rule of law, democracy and fundamental values deserve a careful examination, as these remain the cornerstones of our enlargement policy. The merit-based approach, the merit-based nature of the enlargement process requires particular attention, as these countries must demonstrate determination to actually implement irreversible reforms across all areas of EU law, with an especial emphasis on fundamental values. The implementation of the EU financial instruments also deserve particular attention, as substantial support is being provided through various mechanisms, including the 50 billion Ukraine facility and the 6 billion euro reform and growth facility for the Western Balkans, the newly proposed 1.8 billion euro Moldova growth plan, and of course, IPA3, the instrument for pre-accession assistance. Final point, our rapporteurs in this committee will be working on the own initiative reports on the 2023-2024 Commission reports on the 10 enlargement countries, with a view to adopting all reports before the summer recess. Today's meeting will have the following structure. I will now give the floor to Marta Kos, our Commissioner, for roughly 15 minutes for her introduction, and then we will have, as usually, a Q&A session starting with the AFET coordinators. Once again, dear Commissioner, a warm welcome to your committee here in the European Parliament. We're responsible for you and your work, and I now give you the floor for 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, dear Chair McAllister, honourable members. It is because of you that I may sit here today as Commissioner. We met the last time during my hearing, and the first impression being a Commissioner, I can tell you it is the best job I could have in the world. I'm energized because the enlargement today, Mr. Chair, is, you know, and we all know, is different than it used to be 5 years back. And we have this huge opportunity to move things forward. We haven't seen them in the last 10 years, I can say. 2 months ago, as I have said, you placed your trust in me to take the task to drive the EU enlargement and Eastern neighbourhood policy. I was, and I still am, honoured by that trust. In my opening remarks, I would focus on the events of the past weeks since we last met and share with you what the Commission has already delivered, what has moved me and inspired me, and the elements where I would ask your support of cooperation. I officially started my mandate on a night train, travelling through a country at war together with the Council President Costa and HR VP Kallas. We went to Kiev to show support to a nation that has been resisting Russia's full-scale war of aggression for almost 3 years now. And we also did it as a strong sign of EU institutional unity on Ukraine's future, setting the tone for the new Commission mandate. Namely, it has been for the first time that the President of the Council, the Commissioner and the HRVP went together to Ukraine. In Kiev, I told President Zelensky and Deputy Prime Minister Stefanishina that the Ukrainian people can count on the EU and on me and my team to be a part of all-around team and help them prepare their place inside our union as they pursue the necessary political, institutional, social and economic reforms. I told them that together with the G7 and other like-minded partners, we will support their recovery and reconstruction. In the Verkhovna Rada, the Parliament of Ukraine, as you know, I emphasized the importance of interinstitutional cooperation. Enlargement, in my eyes, is a whole society project. It is not only a project of the government and the Parliament. We have to include civil society. I also met with the local civil society organizations and veterans of this terrible war. Among them, I met Maxim Butkevich, a human rights activist. He spent 2 years in Russian captivity. He told me, I quote, "What helped me survive was believing in values." Values gave him hope. He looked at the European Union as a guardian of human dignity, of freedom and democracy, of solidarity and human rights. These values and his dream of a better tomorrow became his anchor during the darkest times in jail. Maxim Butkevich and many others in Ukraine dream of Europe because they have seen a world without values, a world of brutality, injustice and impunity. More and more we are seeing a world emerging in which size and power are used for blackmail and where military solutions seems to gain the upper hand to the peaceful resolution of conflicts. A world in which many would like to see Europe fail, and they are investing considerable resources to achieve that. The situation in Georgia and the energy blackmail we see in Moldova are a stark reminder of the challenges we face. In a world in which the strong prey on the weak, peace, freedom and prosperity in our continent depend on the strength, on the unity, and yes, the size of our union. This is why I believe that our enlargement policy has a higher purpose. It is to the benefit of all Europeans in existing member states and in future ones. I know the majority of this House shares my enthusiasm when I say that the first time in 10 years we have a realistic prospect that during this mandate we can bring one, in my opinion, 2 or 3 more enlargement countries to the finish line. We have an enormous responsibility to help future member states prepare their place inside the European Union. Yes, the war of aggression against Ukraine has opened a window of opportunity for enlargement. It has created, but I have been very clear with all my interlocutors in the past weeks. There will be no geopolitical discount. The enlargement process remains merit-based. As I told you on November 7, I will walk the talk about European values. The rule of law and fundamental values will continue to be cornerstone of the EU's enlargement policy and the foundations of a reformed and enlarged union in the future. Last Friday, I was in Warsaw, in Poland, to discuss how to move the process forward as efficiently as possible. I hope that with the support of EU member states, we will see during the Polish presidency the opening of 1 or 2 clusters with Ukraine and Moldova, as well as progress on several other clusters and chapters in the Western Balkans. To put this in a context, if candidate countries stick to the reform efforts, we could see more progress during the Polish presidency than during the last 10 years. It is possible to have 10 IGCs. And this is a vision of me and my team, and it is doable. During my hearing, I made the commitment that those who undertake necessary reforms should reap the benefits of their efforts and move faster toward EU accession. Moldova is a showcase for that. They have made great efforts, and we need to match them. First and foremost, by establishing the Reform and Growth Facility for Moldova. Here, I very much appreciate your support. In the face of ongoing Russian interference and manipulation, Moldova needs our help more than ever, and they need it as fast as possible. We cannot let them down. The growth facility, which amounts to 1.8 billion euro, is the largest EU financial support package for Moldova since its independence. It will boost Moldova's economy and bring the country closer to the EU membership by accelerating reforms. I look forward to the start of the trialogue negotiations. I hope we can conclude them by March to enable a swift adoption of the facility. The situation in Georgia, on the other hand, is a stark reminder that the path to EU membership is not easy and that setbacks can happen, and they do happen. I deeply regret the authorities continue to shift away from the EU integration. The Georgian people's choice for European integration was embedded in a constitutional commitment, and they are taking to the streets night after night because they clearly wish to keep it. The action of the authorities against peaceful protesters, opposition representatives, civil society organizations and journalists are entirely unacceptable. The Commission has already withheld more than 100 million euro of funding directly benefiting the Georgian authorities, and we are looking into further reallocations. We have also proposed to partially suspend the EU-Georgia visa facilitation agreement so we can introduce visa requirements for holders of diplomatic service passports issued by Georgia. EU member states will vote on the proposal by the end of January. At the same time, we continue to stand, I'm still speaking about Georgia, behind civil society organizations and independent media. 8.5 million euro have already been reallocated to them. We are also ready to reallocate additional 7 million euro to communication activities, and we need to step up response to disinformation spread by the Georgian Dreams leadership. As for the Western Balkans, I see many rapporteurs for those countries. We have started the mandate by opening one cluster with Albania and closing, this was all in December, 3 chapters with Montenegro. And we ended the year with the Western Balkan Summit. These are milestones to celebrate. This week I will travel to the region in my capacity as Commissioner for the first time to visit Montenegro, also from my side based on the merit-based principle. I will go there to celebrate their achievements. Just before Christmas they close, as I have said, 3 chapters, and I will encourage further progress still during the Polish presidency of the Council. The Montenegrins have set themselves the highly ambitious goal to close the negotiations by the end of 2026. They will, for this, have to continue working through the remaining chapters with determination. This can be done, but it will require a consensus across political parties to swiftly pass the proposed reforms and legislative initiatives of the European reform agenda after they have been consulted with the European Commission. A call for unity will be the heart of my message being in Podgorica. I will also travel outside the capital. I have tasked my team to include visits to give visibility to EU-funded projects, cultural events, meeting with the civil society, with powerful women and with local and regional authorities in every one of my missions, what I have promised you during my hearing, because I strongly believe that EU accession requires an effort by the whole society. Governments and parliaments alone cannot do the job. It needs to be a national project owned by everyone, the parliament, the opposition, civil society, every region, town and village, and ultimately every single citizen. As you know, President von der Leyen has entrusted me with the task of communicating the benefits of EU enlargement, not just to candidate countries, but also to our member states, to citizens and stakeholders. The strategy, the first outlines will be prepared at the end of the month of January, will be underpinned by facts and figures, but it should go beyond. It needs to resonate with the heart. It should be about the things that stir emotions and create connections. For me, culture and sports hold a unique power to unite people across borders. We are already talking with the candidate countries to organize a football match between a team of candidate countries and a team of the member states. I think if we have some sporty members of the AFET or of the European Parliament, including women, of course, warmly welcome. With the Prime Minister of Albania, we are talking about the same match, but in basketball, since he used to be a basketball player. And next week, we have the Croatian representative here. Next week, the World Championship in men handball starts simultaneously in Norway and in Croatia. And I have been speaking to the national teams of both countries to organize a hand match team between the candidate countries and the member states. I just wanted to illustrate we have to bring this soft power of enlargement into the hardcore enlargement process, which consists of chapters, benchmarks, and clusters. One of the most memorable moments, and this time I'm speaking about involving the culture of my early days as commissioner, were the Belarus days we organized together with you, with the European Parliament and the EEAS. It was a powerful demonstration of solidarity with the Belarusian people ahead of the so-called elections, showcasing the incredible strength of Belarusian culture. I will never forget Svetlana Tikhanovskaya's words when we met. Each act of creativity is blow against oppression. That statement has stayed with me as a reminder of how culture can inspire hope. During my hearing, I asked for your support in this communication effort, and I ask for it again today. This effort cannot focus solely on national governments. It must reach the European. You, as members of the European Parliament, represent Europeans from towns, cities and villages, from every walk of life. Your insights is invaluable. Please help me understand, first, what are the hopes, dreams, concerns and worries of your voters? Secondly, how can we work together to address them? Third, what can we do to ensure that the enlargement is not just a political process, but a shared vision that inspires and unites all Europeans, just as it inspired so many of us in the early 2000s when our countries returned home to Europe? And fourth, how to best present the positive impact of enlargement on the EU with facts and figures, and under all 4 points together with you. Dear members, I'm of course here to answer your questions, and I also hope that many of you will also answer mine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, dear Commissioner, for your introductory statement. I will now first give the floor, as always, to our AFET coordinators, followed by a second round of our standing rapporteurs for the enlargement countries, and then further members wishing to take the floor in case time allows. Before I give the floor to Michael Gahler, let me welcome a special guest. We have many guests from the enlargement countries who are following this meeting, but I have been informed that Ms. Yurida Tabaku, the chair of the EU Affairs Committee in the Albanian Parliament, is attending our session. So a warm welcome to you, dear Yurida, dear colleague from Tirana. And now I give the floor first to Michael Gahler for 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. Happy New Year, dear Commissioner. Thank you for the overview. I cannot address everything that you mentioned here in these 2 minutes, but I would like also, as a Ukraine rapporteur, thank you for starting your office, your mandate in Ukraine, and also, and that is important, meeting a broad spectrum of stakeholders in the country. As we have passed 3/4 of the first year of implementing the Ukraine facility, can we already assess how, in which way the homework that is attached in the annex of this facility, how that is being implemented? Can we say, okay, they are on a good track, and accordingly we can then also pay out the lump sums always ahead in this regard? That is on Ukraine. You refer to the Reform and Growth Facility for Moldova that needs to be implemented. I think they are in a tragic situation currently because, of course, the transit from gas to Transnistria has stopped, but also in Moldova itself, the gas prices have risen by 90%. So I think ahead of the elections in June, and it's to be assumed that the Russians will redirect the money, the gas, but only for Transnistria and not for Moldova. What can we do to get a situation where this gas situation does not negatively impact on the political development there? Perhaps there is some ideas that can be developed, and some low-hanging fruit. I referred earlier to some specific goodies that we might get to every citizen, speaking of the roaming zone to enlarge it perhaps before the elections to Moldova. Briefly on Albania, as we have the chair of the committee there, please talk when you go there at some point. Talk also with a broad spectrum of stakeholders. I think the Prime Minister there is having a very egomaniacal, selbstherrlich in German, way of exercising his power. I think that is not in line with EU standards. Please have a look on Albania specifically. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tonino Pizzula for the S&D. 2 minutes.
Thank you, David. Madam Commissioner, welcome to our first exchange of views with you as a confirmed Commissioner. You can count on support of S&D Group that led the support in this House in recent years, and on my personal engagement. I support your focus on the rule of law and the democracy, that they should remain the cornerstone of the process. My personal opinion is that they should be brought back as a backbone of the process, because sometimes along the way Commission's focus was rather on economic investments and common market, dedicating minimal fractions of overall funding for the strengthening of the institutions and the rule of law. My question, do you intend to follow up with concrete modification in that sense? I also share your recent assessment that the engagement process is merit-based and should remain that way. Also, the efforts of the candidate countries should be matched. There is a prevalent feeling that North Macedonia is a country where we failed to do so the most. In that context, what actions do you plan for North Macedonia to minimize the consequences of the latest decoupling with Albania? Lastly, in Serbia, we see the ongoing protests and particular inconsistencies of the EU leadership when assessing the situation there. Despite the content of the European Commission Progress Report, where many reasons for concerns are underlined. Serbia is the biggest country in the region, and the political actions of its leadership have direct consequences on the political stability in PNH and Montenegro, for example. My question to you, how do you plan to preserve the credibility of the EU in this process and thus support genuine progress in Serbia, which is the key precondition for the success of the enlargement process in the whole region? Thank you in advance.
Thank you, Tonino. Next is Mr. Tangier Correa for the Patriots.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner. Thank you for coming and speaking to us. Very kind of you. I heard you, like the first time in your hearings, and you repeated today that the enlargement is a question of merit. There's a bit nebulous, let's say it. I think this is a threefold activity. First, political. Second, the technical. And third is a home issue, meaning for the states who already are members of the European Union. So, from the political point of view, we have, like it was mentioned before, the Western Balkans, and mainly Serbia, Republic of Moldova, and Northern Macedonia, who are now under bigger influence from Russia and from China. And this is a big political problem as well as Republic of Moldova. So, first question is, how do you intend to counter this growing influence of these two countries, particularly these two countries? From the technical point of view and the Copenhagen criteria, we see some problems coming from Albania, Kosovo, and Ukraine, of course, because of their situation. So my question to you is, how are you going to manage these technical criteria with these countries who present deep problems in this area? And finally, the home countries, meaning the countries already part of the European Union. It's essential that these countries shall not be in a bad situation because of the enlargement, of a worse situation. So it's very important to deal with this problem. How do you intend to deal with this as well? Thank you.
Thank you. For the ECR group, Mr. Gambino, please.
Signor Presidente.
Chairman, Commissioner, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm very pleased to hear the proposals that you're putting forward today for this mandate. Maybe I could just take a little more focus on Albania and Montenegro and the enlargement process there. We've seen some very strong signals sent out in a positive way for the Western Balkan countries. However, it's crucial that we keep our focus on what's going on, both in terms of internal reforms, but also when it comes to the possible influence from countries outside, such as Russia. My question is the following. In the light of significant progress on negotiations for Albania and Montenegro, could the 2028-29 be a realistic proposal for accession for them? Is this too ambitious? What sort of steps need to be taken to achieve that timetable? Then with the political elections in Albania coming up in May this year, it would be useful for the Commission to think about what could be done to avoid any kind of interference in these elections from outside. Unfortunately, we've seen this happening in both Georgia and Moldova. And then we need to see some coordinated action from the EU to make sure that the processes in Albania and Montenegro can go ahead in a positive fashion. And that's essential for the whole region of the Western Balkans as well, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Gambino. For the Renew Group, Hilde Woutmans, please.
Well, thank you very much. And dear Marta, thank you very much for your commitment to the enlargement process. Your portfolio and your work is vital to build a safer Europe. In a way, bringing in the Balkan countries is a work of completing our European security from geographical point of view. And beside the Balkan, I think our focus should, like you said, be on Moldova. It's a small country, but small does not mean insignificant. It's an important distinction, and I know the Commission is doing its part, so my appeal on Moldova is more to my colleagues here in this room than to you. Let's move forward immediately with the growth plan for Moldova and approve the 1.8 billion in support. Second, Marta, the enlargement process cannot be seen separate from the question of the European reform. I think you mentioned it also. We can only enlarge to 30 or more member states if we renew the old political institutions that were built for a union of 12 member states. That's very clear for me. I want to hear your views, and if you are in touch with your colleague for institutional reform. You know that this parliament voted a very good report from the colleague Guy Verhofstadt here in the parliament on the necessary reforms. You know that the conference on the future also stated some reforms. So let us use this enlargement agenda to add some political pressure for the internal renewal of Europe. All the pieces of the puzzle are on the table. Last mandate, the people give their opinion in thousands of citizens' panels. They want a union that is able to decide in this fast-moving world, a union with less blockades and more possibilities. That is no longer blocked by vetoes, left and right, but that can make progress by democratic majority. I would love to hear from you how you see the link between the enlargement and the reform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hilde Woutmans. For the Greens, Hannah Neumann.
It's actually Renier, sorry.
Thanks. So, Ms. Kos, thank you for going directly to Ukraine. I fully support that it's at number one of your list of priorities. As Trump returns to the White House, the first test of Europe's ability to take care of its own security is happening in Georgia. And for months now, the Georgian people have mobilized in unprecedented numbers to protest against a regime that is embracing Russia against the will of its people, because Georgia has a huge majority of pro-Europeans. And I heard them myself in Tbilisi last month. So they are asking for our support, and we should give it. I hope that Georgia can be higher on your list of priorities. And while the United States has imposed sanctions on oligarch Ivanishvili, the Council has only been drafting plans to revoke diplomatic passports for Georgian officials, and that's completely insufficient. So my questions are, what will you do to impose sanctions? Do you support the call for new independent elections as the Parliament has called for in its last resolution? And what other measures will you take to help Georgian Democrats?
Thank you. For the left, who would like to take the floor? Okay, nobody present. Then for the ESN group, Mr. Stoyanov, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will speak in Bulgarian.
Madam Commissioner, I welcome your efforts to reach progress on the enlargement of the EU, but it has to take into account the long-term interests of the member states. We need clear strategy to deal with problems such as corruption, rule of law, human rights. There should be no compromising with the criteria for membership. The Western Balkans faces systemic economic problems related to investment, low innovation. Therefore, investment is so important. It is unclear, however, how funds provided by the EU will be monitored and how their effective and transparent use will be ensured. The internal reform of the EU is also expected. This requires substantial change in the way decisions are made. It is unclear how EU will adapt to accept new members beyond 30 members. The public sentiment on both sides should not be overlooked. The rising skepticism in the EU and the Western Balkans puts under question the enlargement. There should be broader public support for enlargement. This is of utmost importance. Thank you.
Thank you. So this concludes the first round of the coordinators. There will be, of course, a second round for all other members, and especially for the rapporteurs. Commissioner, I will now give you the floor for 8 minutes to answer the questions and comments, and then we move on. Please.
Thank you so much. If I follow the geographical order, Mr. Galler, Ukraine is doing a huge work. When I talked to Mr. Zelensky, he asked me to open all the chapters in this year. So I was kind of in the corner, you know, we are willing, we will do this. And when I heard this for a second time, I said, it's not only about the opening, it's mainly about the closing. So Ukraine, back to your question, is doing really good reforms, but they have to be sustainable reforms. They know this, and we know we are supporting them. And yes, the money is helping. We have in the Ukrainian facility, because it is also enabling building their institutions. So coming back, what is possible to do with them? It is possible that we will open the first cluster of fundamentals, and even the 31st, this is the foreign policy, in this year. If they deliver what they have promised, and if we will be able to have a successful procedure in the Council. And this is now coming to one very important point, and this is the same for Moldova. There are also chances that we will open the first and the 31st cluster with Moldova this year. But we need the support from the Council in the whole decision-making process. Why is this important? Just to illustrate, we need 150 unanimity decisions for one candidate country to start and to finish the negotiating process. And those unanimity decisions have to be taken in the Council. Now, for instance, just for Ukraine and Moldova, from today on, we need 3 unanimity decisions. This week we will pass the screening report to the Council. This is the first unanimity decision. Then we have to do the benchmarks. Then we need the unanimity decision again. And then we need the Commission opinion and again unanimity decision. And when I visited Warsaw last Friday, we also talked how to handle this, because the accession process, it's not only the thing of my work or the work of the Commission, it is also and mainly about what the Member States will do or how they will decide. And this is what I also see as my task. And here I ask you for your help to enabling us. We can speak very highly about how capable we are of doing the enlargement. And yes, we are from the technical part of view, but we have to include the decision-making process. So please, all the member states, this is our, as I see it, a common project. And I will, now speaking about Moldova, I will visit Moldova at the beginning of February. It is very important that we support Moldova as much as possible before the parliamentary elections. And I will also meet the Prime Minister, who is personally dealing with the energy crisis. I was mentioning before the wording energy blackmailing. Yes, Mr. Galler, we are worrying how we could help. Until now, they still have the energy, and we have provided some fundings to help them, but it has to be sustainable through the whole winter. Then about Albania, there were many questions also from you and then from Mr. Gambino. We have for the time being 2, if I may use the words, front runners, Montenegro and Albania. And speaking about the schedule, Montenegro has a vision to finish the negotiating process until the end of 26, and Albania until the end of 27. We will support them in this vision, but of course this is hard work. And when you said 28, Mr. Cambino, if membership it is possible, then again I come to the member states. I hope, and this I want at this point I want to bring in some very important part, and I will come back to merit-based process. The merit-based process or the merit-based principle should not be only upon the candidate countries, it should also be upon us, the member states. Meaning, if the countries deliver, they should be able to join. So this is merit-based for all of us. And yes, I will also go in February to Albania. We finally have, Mr. Cambino and all the others, movements in the Western Balkans. And I hope that the positive development will induce the energy in all the other countries, including Serbia. You know that in December we couldn't open the third cluster on the competitiveness for Serbia because they have to fulfill some obligations. So we are now following the non-paper and what they have promised. So again, when I speak about the merit-based process, it is not about a negotiating process, it is also what they have promised to deliver in order to be able to open the clusters. And of course, it is the same for North Macedonia. I have a direct eye contact with you, Mr. Kovachev, so we hope that that Macedonia will fulfill the commitment to change the constitution. And then I'm sure once we will start rolling with North Macedonia, also with the support of Bulgaria, we could go on. And Mr. Pizzula, you have mentioned the question of credibility of the EU. It is on both sides, meaning being demanding towards the candidate country, but also honored if they deliver. And generally speaking, this is the beauty, in my eyes, of the whole negotiating process. Namely, through the whole negotiating process, we can really watch over what they do, in which manner, and how do they align their legislation with the acquis communautaire. And speaking about values, Mr. Pizzula, I agree. I would be the most happiest person if this would not be needed, speaking about the values anymore. But Article number 2 from the treaty, it's the most important article, if I speak very in the broader sense, for the whole negotiating process. And I'm happy what you have mentioned and sometimes said. It is not only about the economy. We are living today in the times. I have crossed the time. Sorry, you just pushed me here that I will have to stop. You see, I'm really energetic when I speak about this. But we are living in the world where European Union could stay the only entity in the world defending values. Not because it is easier, but because it is right. You know, speaking about the discrepancy or a paradox of the relation between a merit-based and the geopolitics, if we would consider just the geopolitics, we should let entering all the candidate countries today. But it is also about us. And we will see what kind of impact the new United States President will have also on the enlargement. And just one more point about the internal reforms, or what should we do. Hilde, I agree with you completely. We have to be ready. We cannot allow ourselves to accept new member states well, we will not be ready. And when I say we, I don't mean just the European Commission, the European Parliament and the Council. I mean the people in the respective countries. And this is a hard work. This is a hard work, how to explain to the people the benefits of the enlargement in the completely changed world which we experience today. So coming from Renew, you were mentioning renewing Europe. Yes, perhaps we should look into it, what is needed to change to be able to go on. And of course, Reinier from the Greens, I agree with you. Me personally would love to put Georgia higher on the agenda.
Thank you. I have a huge list of colleagues who want to take the floor in the second round. So what we will do is it's 1 minute each. And 1 minute, I think there's an understanding among the groups that 1 minute is 60 seconds. Raza Gundevičienė is first, our rapporteur for Georgia.
Thank you very much. Of course, I will touch Georgian issue. And just saying shortly that what's happening now in Georgia is not just something local on the periphery of Europe. And it's very important what's going on there. And we visited, 7 of us visited Georgia in December. 3 most important points. First, non-recognition. Second, sanctions. Third, new election. First, on non-recognition. Georgia dream, somebody say Georgian nightmare, are desperately seeking their legitimization. So that's why it's important to avoid unprepared visits. But on the other hand, we have to see what we can do. Look, people of Georgia started a debydzynization process, and they will go on. People we met in the streets, they said that we will never give up, and we will never let Georgia to be part of Ruski Mir or Russian Federation. Second, sanctions. Understand, but how difficult. But United States, they already mentioned that sanctions for Bedina Ivanishvili were implemented for the democratic and Euro-Atlantic future of Georgia, undermining and benefit for Russian Federation. And the third, Chairman, very important one, new election. It's time to start to think about a very plan how to help Georgian people to regain their stolen votes. No other choice.
Thank you. That was 80 seconds, but next attempt, 60 seconds, Andreas Schieder for Albania.
Thank you, Chairman. Before going to Albania, I also wanted to mention, as you mentioned, defending the values, what was going on in the last weeks on the streets of Belgrade, where very encouraged people took also the demonstration to fight for their values. And on Albania, just quickly, as you mentioned, it is as a front runner. But I think it is also important to mention it's also about closing chapters and implementing the reforms. And it's good to be a front runner, but of course there remains a lot of things to do. And the last point I wanted to mention also, because you mentioned sports. And you mentioned basketball, which might be a quite unfair game if Edi Rama is taking place because he's not only experienced but also tall. But there is also the 9th of May, where the Giro d'Italia is taking its depart from Tirana, which is also a very strong signal of European sports tradition. It's also the Giro of Italia then later on is passing on to Slovenia, which I think is a very strong signal.
Thank you, Andreas. Next is our colleague Weitz, the rapporteur for Northern Macedonia.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. You have partly already reacted on some of the questions also related to Hilde Woutmans, but to be more concrete, a merit-based process to reach these merits, very often that needs a lot of strength, a lot of power, and a lot of political capital in the countries themselves. Opposition joining the position parties, also paying a certain political price for the merits. But if we then do not fulfill our promise to move move on, to close chapters, to move on with the accession process. We're frustrating the population, we're frustrating the political class, and this has happened in North Macedonia. It might be very legitimate to have bilateral issues between countries, but the way we're acting today is that even a very small fraction of a political representatives can actually stall the whole process by just provoking the neighbor country with something. We've seen it in Montenegro with the so-called Jasenovac's resolution. We've seen it in North Macedonia on many cases. And even if the bilateral issues are legitimate, are you looking into the possibility to decouple intermediate steps from unanimous decisions, which would not need a treaty reform, but just a decision in the...
Thank you. Next is Juliana Zovko.
Right, thank you very much, and congratulations on this demanding task. As somebody who is coming from the region, you must understand that the complexity of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have 30th anniversary of Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement this year. The leaving administration in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Ambassador Murphy has overstepped his authority and pushed the law that endanger Croatia's interest in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia's energetic security by asking and pressing and overvoting Croat representatives on interconnection, southern interconnection. And this is only for his sole personal interest. So in order to uphold Dayton-Paris Peace Agreement, we have to work with Trump administration. And as somebody who is representing Commission, what will you do to stop this ambassador to meddle into his and overstepping his duties by waiting for the new ambassador and to work and to finally voice the protest from European Union and to hold the candidate countries sovereign country, because we are protesting at Trump's demands on Greenland, but already we have administration of leaving President Biden interfering in local domestic laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is for the S&D, Tobias Kremer.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Marta. And first of all, also thank you for having had your first visit to Ukraine. I think that was a very clear, necessary sign, and you have our full support for that. I'm also delighted to hear that you'll be going to Moldova, which I think is very necessary, especially in the light of the upcoming parliamentary elections, because I think we have to also be very clear to ourselves that when we negotiate with many of these countries and work with many of these countries, we're working with them, but unfortunately at the table there's also the shadow of the Kremlin and of the Russian playbook of election interference, manipulation, disinformation. So my question is, what will you do very concretely with regards to Moldova, in the cooperation with Moldova, to help them increase resilience? Because what we have seen both in Moldova and in Georgia is that the manipulation from Russia is now different. It's not just ballot stuffing that we can see in our electoral emissions, but it's more long-term, it's smarter, and what we also see, it's often just a try, an attempt, and looking how it works in these countries to then also try and manipulate our elections. So this is also now a very self-interest. So my question is, how are you going to approach that very directly and help Moldova become more resilient? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Davor Stier.
Thank you, Chair, Madam Commissioner. You rightly say that it should not be a geopolitical discount. What I would add to that, that should be a CFP alignment. And we saw, for example, all the Western Balkan countries supporting the EU's position on Venezuela. And unfortunately, we saw also that after that, Serbia sent the Speaker of the Parliament to the inauguration of Maduro. So we need more consistency there. Now, I do have two concrete questions. One is, can we speed up the integration of the Western Balkan countries into the European roaming-free area? It's on voluntary basis. We have a better arrangement with Ukraine. Can we use that also for the Western Balkans, for example? And the second question, we have a limit of 90 days for truck drivers from the Western Balkans every 6 months. And that is impeding, for example, a better integration of these markets into the European single market. Can we be more flexible? Are you looking into that? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Ferenc. Oh, Ms. Ferenc, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will speak in Hungarian. Tisztelt Biztos asszony!
Dear Madam Commissioner, the Ukrainian population has been suffering the horrors of war for more than 3 years, and minorities living there also suffer a limitation, a restriction of their rights. Last year, Hungary summarized the problems in 11 points, and Ukraine promised to deal with this. They promised to restore the Hungarian minorities' rights living in Transcarpathia, but nothing happened. And the National Organization of Minorities doesn't include the Hungarian minority living in Transcarpathia, which means they do not have real and free representation in Ukraine. So what do you think, in your opinion, does Ukraine meet the Copenhagen criteria, especially as far as the rights of minorities are concerned? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Coles.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Commissioner, so we have already defined the democracy is back on a backslide in Georgia. We see that there is internal instability in Albania that is undermining the reform momentum as well. And we talk about the merit-based approach here. Will you be also assessing the upcoming reports by the EU Court of Auditors on the use of EU funds so far at the candidate countries? And because we know how harsh are actually we ourselves towards member states when there is ill use of or abuse of EU funds, it should be also very harsh policy towards the candidate countries, aspirant countries as well receiving EU funding. But based on the merit-based approach, my question would be on the accession talks when we talk Ukraine, Moldova. Well, Georgia obviously is out of question by 2028. That's the ruling regime has defined. There won't be any engagements whatsoever. I would also ask you to respect this House resolution as well, where we do not recognize the elections in Georgia as well. But sorry, Mr. McAllister, just the last point I made, I forgot to mention, in a merit-based approach, the compliance with the common security foreign policy for the candidates. Thank you.
Look, colleagues, why am I so strict with the 1-minute rule? You all want to take the floor. If you don't get the floor, you complain. So it's also to show collegiality with others to stick to 60 seconds. It's as simple as that. Mr. Ostrevičius.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Commissioner, thank you very much for your very cooperative spirit. I mean, you presented in your introductory remarks, and I'm looking forward to continue in this kind of way over the 2025 and more. Firstly, criteria of alignment with European Union's foreign security policy, although it looks like a secondary, but it is so important. It's like indicator where the candidate country really goes. I mean, the case of Serbia was mentioned. I ask you, to keep an eye on the kind of the framework of alignment with the foreign security policy, not as a secondary, but as a primarily important for EU accession. My second point on communication strategy. It's so important, and I think the European Parliament must be involved into this at very, very start. Looking forward for Commission's proposal. And finally, sanctions against the Georgian judges who make those illegal decisions for detaining protesters are important. Please don't overlook this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Bidron.
Thank you very much, Chair and Commissioner, on two things. First of all, Belarus, the forgotten nation of Europe, as Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya says. I know you participated in Belarusian Days. Thank you for that, 30 million euro aid for civil society. But that's not enough. We have political prisoners. I want to ask what Commission is doing on that. And secondly, on supporting of participation of Belarusian citizens in EU activities. What else can Commission do on that? And secondly, on this information, the candidate countries can, and the same issue as we have with this information, especially through social media, but they don't have Digital Services Act, the instrument we have, weak but still something. What Commission is doing to support the candidate countries fighting disinformation? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Next is Andrei Kovachev.
Thank you very much, Chair, Madam Commissioner, dear Marta. Thank you very much for your approach, which you show us in the beginning of your mandate and good cooperation with the Parliament. You can be sure that we are on your side on the enlargement and to support you. Few points on Albania, please. The most important now is to ensure a democratic electoral process including the opposition, so all stakeholders, and this is also my plea to you that you meet with all political stakeholders in the country. We forgot a bit about Kosovo. There are also elections there on the 9th of February, and especially in the north part of Kosovo. Please observe this very carefully. And my question is also, do you have some indications with the new administration in Washington how this approach will be towards the Western Balkan, and how we can avoid some negative impact on the side of the nationalistic approach party? Thank you very much for what you said about North Macedonia, and we are committed to support the enlargement also there.
Thank you, Andre. Next is our colleague, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Madam Commissioner, you admitted in your opening statement that the European Union that I dare to call Euro-Cohos is no longer, or probably never was, a pragmatic, business-like enterprise. It's not anymore about steel and coal because it all became illegal. So to say, you admitted that it is about doctrine. It is about mission. So my question is, what gives you any right to engage European nations, European states, in your mission that you think is rightful? The mission of reviewing everybody all around how much democratic process is up to your standards. We can see that European nations are under attack from here, from Brussels. Green Deal, Blue Deal, Rainbow Deal, Immigration Pact, warmongering.
Thank you.
What is your answer, and what is your legal basis?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. 1 minute and 60 seconds.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Yes, and now the next speaker is Mr. Lopatka.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for your tireless work for enlargement. Your first Western Balkan country you visit is Montenegro. Is there a special reason why you start with Montenegro? I had the chance to visit the country in December, and I recognized a lot of progress, but also some open questions, like determination of the terms of judges of the Constitutional Court done by the Parliament. All Montenegrin leaders told me, beginning with the Prime Minister's speech, that they have a strong confidence that they will close all chapters by 2026. Do you think this is really a realistic perspective?
Thank you. Next is Herman Tertsch. Herman Tertsch? I saw him.
He left, Mr. President.
Okay, he left. Then next is Mr. Tinkinen.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Commissioner, what are the political tools for the EU to pursue the development of candidate countries? It certainly must not only be money that we pour into the countries. One interesting tool lies in the example of Italy and Albania. These countries came earlier to an agreement that Albania could host hubs for asylum seekers coming to Italy. In these hubs, asylum seekers could wait if they are granted an asylum or whether they will be returned to their home countries. This agreement must be a model for the whole Europe. While solving many problems, at the same time similar agreements would test the candidate countries how well they can manage these hubs in coordination with the EU countries. Madam Commissioner, Do you see a future for similar agreements with other candidate countries too? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nathalie Loiseau, please.
Je vais parler en français. Merci, Madame.
Thank you. I'm going to speak French. Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. You talked about Armenia. Now, I would like to address the European aspirations of the Armenian people. There was a petition recently, and we heard the Prime Minister of Armenia say that there would be a piece of draft legislation put before the Parliament on the people's European aspirations. So I would like to make sure that the Commission is fully up to speed with this and is committed to supporting Armenia and is aware at the same time of the threats that are brought to bear by Azerbaijan on this country, not least recent statements by President Aliyev, who has talked about combating fascism in Armenia being one of the tasks incumbent upon Azerbaijan. I'd also like to talk about Georgia. Some of my colleagues have. You've referenced the authorities in Georgia, and I would like to ask you at least to put this term authorities in parentheses, because the observers of the elections said that the elections were illegitimate, and we should not be lending them any kind of legitimacy ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our colleague, Mr. Ghiadi.
Ευχαριστώ. Η διεύρυνση πρέπει να λαμβάνει υπόψη, όπως πολύ σωστά είπατε, αν αξίζει μια...
Thank you. We need to, indeed, to work on a merit-based approach to accession, as you have said yourself. In recent days, we've seen that President von der Leyen has offered support to Erdogan, for example. What is the reason for this? This is wrong because Turkey is occupying part of Cyprus and because it is not cooperating on matters such as oil reserves, natural gas reserves, or disappeared people, enforced disappearances. Thousands of Cypriots and European citizens simply don't agree with the support that the Commission is lending to Turkey. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone we missed sitting here up front? Some of the standing rapporteurs are not present. That's why I didn't give them the floor. Okay. Commissioner, we come now to the second round of your answers. Since you got very specific questions on the number of countries, and I think that colleagues all deserve an answer, I will now give you time until the end of the session. We will close at 2 minutes to 12. So you have 12, 13, 15 minutes now to run through all the points.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like your effectiveness, but please give me a sign when there will be 2 minutes before.
No, I have his hammer.
Not on my head, please, not on my head. Yes, many questions. Rasa, yes, how to help Georgia? We have to do more. As I have told before to Rainier, it will go up to my priority list. I thank you, all the members of the European Parliament, engaging in Georgia a lot and also giving us the information. I appreciate this, and we will discuss in the next day all the 3 points, Rasa, you have mentioned. About the sanctions, about visa, about everything, it is the decision of the member states. And we are already discussing this. Giro d'Italia, Andreas, yes, this is a really great European project. It is not important, it is very important that Albania or Tirana will start this. And when it is about the values and dealing with Albania and all the countries I will visit, for instance, when I go now to Montenegro, I will speak in the parliament. It started with my wish to speak to the opposition. I met all the political parties in the Ukrainian parliament. So I think this is the only way. Also talking to the opposition, including them, and also civil society. I really mean it. For instance, even in the member states, when I visited Warsaw on Friday, we asked the main think tanks, civil society, to have a meeting with you. All 15 with me. All 15 have answered and did come, and it was great to discuss with them, because they can give a different point of view of what we have. Mr. Cates, yes, bilaterals. I said during my hearing I will do everything that bilaterals will not interfere the negotiating process, but it is already happening and it will happen also in the future. So the task of all of us is how to tackle, how to solve the bilateral issues when they appear. Bosnia and Herzegovina, we don't know yet, Željka, how the US influence will be. But we can be nearly sure that it will not be less, including Bosnia and Dayton agreement. And we hope that we will also move on with Bosnia. It is also on their side that they have to deliver. Thank you, Tobias. Shadow of Kremlin are the words you have used. Indeed, strong and long shadows we have to tackle. And you're right, we have to increase the resilience. I was mentioning in my introduction that at the end of January, we will have the first draft of communications on the enlargement, including how to tackle disinformation. We have to do more, but this is not easy. What is the biggest question? The biggest question is what kind of tools and ways to choose. So we are dealing mostly with this. Money is not a problem. You know, especially, that with the little money you can do a lot in the social media. So this will be one very important part of how to communicate. Davor, yes, indeed. CFCP. No country who is not aligned 100% with the European CFCP will be able to join. This is the statement I will follow. What we can take into the consideration that it cannot happen in one day, or let's say in a short period. So we are also following the development very, very, very carefully, and we will do this, of course, also with Serbia. On the other 2 points, I will dig deeper and come back with what it is possible to do, roaming in the relation Ukraine and Western Balkans, and 90-day track. Alberto is with me today dealing with the Parliament issues, so Alberto, please take care that I will not forget. Great. Minority issue, Hungary, Ukraine. We are aware of the subject, and the Ukrainians are aware of the subject. We are working on this in the sense that this will not be the obstacle not opening the first cluster of fundamentals. So we are dealing with this. Mr. Coles, of course, it is important for us how the money is spent, and we will look into this, because this is, controlling it. We always say it should be transparent, but of course it is also about controlling. So we will consider this. Peter's Renew, yes, again, CFCP is very, very important. And I'm always happy when somebody of you mentioned this communication strategy or communicating better. As soon as we will discuss what my service will prepare at the end of January, I'm willing to discuss with you how we could include, as you have said, European Parliament more in this. And sanctions, should they be or not, we are discussing this, as I have said, also with the member states. Belarus. You know, this was a kind of revelation for me during the whole Belarus week, which we organized. And on the surface, it's nice helping them. If you go deeper, and you know this, Mr. Biedron, it's the question of political prisoners. We also had 2 of the members employed in our services there. One is still in the prison, and we are, of course, working on this. I tell you, very, very difficult, but we are working on this. And we will discuss soon with the HRVP a new strategy on Black Sea or Eastern Partnership, which is also in my portfolio. And I hope we will come with some new ideas and solutions of how to, and going back to your question, include also the participation on Belarus in different areas, what we do. Thank you, Andrei, Mr. Kovachev, for your support. And yes, I agree with you. We should include all the stakeholders. And we have some positive results from Ukraine, where civil society is helping, you know, forming the new legislation, and we will do this in every country. Yes, Kosovo. I didn't mention Kosovo. There will be elections. I don't expect we will be able to move before the elections, but I hope that soon after the elections we will be able to move, because we cannot discuss about Western Balkans if we don't discuss Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, or separately what Kosovo is doing and what Serbia is doing. We are all waiting for January 20th, what kind of decisions on the first day the US President will do. This will also affect our work. Mr. Lopatka, Montenegro, why? I told you before, you know, it's for me also a merit-based principle. I want to honor their efforts, the same as later with Albania. If you just see where Albania has been 5 years back and where it is today, they, of course, deserve our support, not just in words, but going there. And I will speak in the Parliament of Montenegro. I will visit successful EU projects, and I will also go to Cetinje to honor the dead people there. So yes, it is their plan to close all the chapter until 2026. I will do the best that their ambition could be fulfilled, even if there are some problems. But you know, thank you for being there. I also got a message that the rapporteur for Montenegro will go there later this month. So thank you for your engagement there. Mr. Tinkinen, I agree with you completely. It's not just about the money. What kind of political tools? And we have many more other tools. The money we use because we can help the countries on the field of growth, economy growth, which is important to get a stable economy in the respective countries. And the money we also use to build up the institutions which the countries have to have in order to run a democratic system based on the values. The case of coordination or cooperation of Albania and Italy for the asylum seekers is a bilateral agreement. If the countries want to do this, it is at their disposition. Natalie, thank you for mentioning Armenia. We hear too that there are some positive movements. To apply for the EU membership, it's a choice. And we have to handle all the applications very, very carefully, and we will do the same with Armenia. But this choice, once Armenia would decide to apply, it's connected with obligations, and I'm sure, and this is also my plan, to go there in the first half of the year to see on the spot what we should do before, or what they would need to exchange the information, and also, Natalie, how to deal with Armenia. You have also mentioned Azerbaijan will also be a part of the new way of Eastern Partnership, which is in my portfolio. Mr. Ghaadi, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, promised 1 billion for helping mostly the Syrian refugees. And I think this is really a good thing that we do. In the latest years, we have provided nearly 10 billion money for the better functioning of the asylum centers, in the sense of enabling refugees a better life, schooling for their children, and health care. And this 1 billion, which is, was promised for Turkey, again, we honor what Turkey is doing on the field of helping the refugees. On the other hand, you know that we have Council conclusions from the last year that we should engage more in the dialogue with Turkey. And in March, April, we plan to have a high dialogue on economy. And together with the Commissioner Dombrovskis, I will be a part of this. I think this is everything.
Thank you, Commissioner. This was on time. Colleagues, we will now be working on the reports. The standing rapporteurs will be drafting reports, so we have time to discuss all the countries in detail. I would like to thank Commissioner Kos for attending today's meeting, for this exchange of views. Next meeting of our committee will be on the 30th of January, 9 o'clock till 12:30. Any other business to be raised from your side? That is not the case. Then our meeting is now closed. Thank you.